what we're going to do in this coffee conversation is review some environmental strategies, hear from coalitions, and really this is about an opportunity for you all to interact and have some time for Q&A. So feel free to think, as you're listening, think of questions, think of what you'd like to know more about. So I want to thank both Jen and Marianne, who agreed to share some of their success stories from Building a Safer Evansville and Orange Partnership. So we'll hear from them in just a little bit. All right, so I wanted to start just with a quick review of environmental strategies because I think sometimes we use these terms, but we don't really define them to make sure everybody's on the same page. And when I think about making a change, we reduce everything sometimes to a really simple individual process, right? We say, well, it's just one person just needs to change something and then everything else will change. But we know in our work that it's really important to use multiple strategies to go beyond that individual effort to make a lasting systemic environmental change. So, of course, we have behavior changing taking place at two levels, both individual and environmental. And that strategy that we use is a way of describing how we're going to get things done. So we're not talking about necessarily an action plan, which really lays out all of the who, what, when, where, but the strategy is that overall broad answer to the question, how do we get there from here? And when we're talking about good strategies, they take into account all of the existing barriers and resources. So people, money, power, structures, materials, all those things. And good strategies stay with the overall vision, mission, and objectives of whatever initiative it is we're working on. So when we talk about comprehensive behavior change, we're talking both that individual and environmental level. So let's just look at these briefly, give you a little reminder of some of these. So our individual strategies, this is when we're talking about changing or influencing an individual person's attitudes, choices, and behaviors. So it's about, convincing that person to stop smoking or to make an individual behavior change. And our strategies that go along with this are providing information, building skills, and providing social support. And all of those individual strategies are aimed at informing, developing, and supporting change at the individual or at the targeted group level. So I might, if I'm trying to affect a change in a health-related behavior, I might provide some information in a brochure, or I might offer a skill building class about how to cook new foods or learn how to do a new exercise. Or I can provide social support either through a support group or through funding supporting activities for that individual or targeted group. All right, so then, of course, we get into our environmental strategies, and these are our prevention efforts aimed at changing or influencing our community conditions, standards, institutions, structures, systems, policies, all of those things that shape behavior. And sometimes these are big changes, and sometimes they're small changes that lead to larger population effects. So let's look at some of the ways that we incorporate environmental strategies. Of course, we can reduce barriers or enhance access. So we can make it easier for somebody to do the right thing or make it harder for them to do the wrong thing. We can change their consequences and incentives, alter physical design, or change policy and rules. So these are all ways that we can affect more than just one person by changing some systemic or environmental design elements. Oftentimes we may feel like these are too big or too challenging, and so we tend to stick with more individual level changes. So that's why we really wanted to highlight some of the coalition work that is happening around environmental strategies to provide encouragement and inspiration for other folks who are involved in the same kind of work. everyone else on the call, this is really about what you want to learn, what you want to know about how they got all these things started, about, you know, some of their pros and cons, whatever it is. So please feel free to ask those questions. And without further ado, I will stop talking and invite Marianne to jump back in.
Okay, so yeah, we'd be happy to share some of the things we've been doing. Erin had asked us to share some things that we're doing around prescription drug and opioid abuse prevention. And you know, some of these things I think will sound pretty familiar to a lot of coalitions. I think are pretty common, and we've tried to really take things maybe a little step further to see how we can make more of an impact in our whole community. So they're primarily, we've worked around access, which I think is, again, something that a lot of coalitions are addressing around prescription drugs. And then, so I'm going to talk about 3 things we're doing around access, and then quickly wanted to share what one of our members, actually our sheriff's office, something that they're doing that's been a recent development that we're excited about and supporting. So primarily we look at safe disposal, safe storage, and safe prescribing. So safe disposal, I think, you know, installing drop boxes, again, I think that's something I won't spend a lot of time talking about that. I think a lot of coalitions are working with their communities and installing the drug drop boxes. We've gotten 3 installed in our small area, and as well as doing, you know, working with our law enforcement on the drug drop event. One thing that we're excited about that's happened recently around that is we had one of our drop boxes that was sort of underperforming. The sheriff's office had wanted one at their courthouse, and so we were happy to get one there. They weren't getting a whole lot in it, and sometimes they would get weapons and things. It was sort of, yeah, right there before people went through the metal detectors. So there were some interesting things showing up in it. So what we didn't have is a drop box in an area that was not a law enforcement agency, and we started to realize that that was a barrier, that there are people in our community that are just not comfortable going into the law enforcement agencies. So we worked with a local pharmacy who agreed to take that box and went through the process. So we now have our first drop box in a local pharmacy and not in a law enforcement agency. So we're excited about that development and hope that it's going to increase the use of that, and maybe some folks that wouldn't use them will be more likely to go there and take their supplies. Then around safe storage, we've actually had a prescription drug lockbox initiative over the past year, and this was actually based on we originally at one of the Epiphany retreats, hearing about the Evanston Substance Abuse Coalition and a session that they did on lockboxes. So we were happy to try to replicate that and took that back to our community. And we've given out about 200 over the past year. In addition to getting those into hands at outreach events, we've really tried to do that through our partners. And so that when they're working with clients and customers and things, that we're really getting those into the hands of the folks that are most likely, most need them. And then we've also been doing a little evaluation around that and trying to follow up with folks about 6 months after they've gotten a lockbox, just to figure out, you know, are they easy to use? Are they still using them? What were the challenges to using them? Did they make it, were they helpful? So we're kind of compiling that data now to see if these, you know, purchasing these lockboxes and getting them out into the hands of community members is actually making a difference in in safe storage. We've also been trying to, and in addition, looking at the bigger picture, knowing that we can't give out lockboxes forever. The second part of that is really trying to increase the number of our local stores and pharmacies that actually carry them. Because when we first started this, I think Guyon had done, looked around at all the different drugstores and convenience stores, Walmart, and I think one had a lockbox.
In the beginning, none of them were carrying lock boxes. There were other things that could be used, and when we first started to talk with them, their response was, well, if we knew people would purchase them, then we would carry it. So we had to drive that conversation, which was one of the reasons why we modeled the Lockbox initiative after what Evanston had done, because we realized we need to get those into the community, into people's hands, so they would be asking for them. And now we are seeing that all of the pharmacies are carrying some sort of lock boxes, at least in our small area. And we have a handful of pharmacies. Some are better than others, but there is at least that increase in availability of lock boxes. One of the interesting things that came out of the survey, one of the questions was, is if you were to purchase your own lockbox, how much would you pay, or up to how much? And there were different numbers as far as from $10 to $50, and the majority said $30, which actually was in line with the cost of what many of the pharmacies were carrying, and so what they are carrying now. But when going back to the pharmacies, we were able to say, see, people are saying that they would purchase, and this is how much they would pay for it if they were to be carried. At that time, only one pharmacy was carrying a lockbox, and it was about that cost. So that really helped get people from the different stores on board.
Yes. And right now we have there's a statewide campaign in North Carolina called Lock Your Meds, and we're working with that and trying to get out a lot of awareness while we're trying to get these lock boxes out. So we're hoping that there's going to be an increase in demand as well, and that as there is, they'll be more available. And then one more thing that we are working on with Safe Storage is working with local builders to, as they're developing new communities and building, and even Habitat for Humanity, that they would be automatically putting a lock on a cabinet in a kitchen. It would be sort of a signature service that they would provide. We've had a neighboring coalition have success already getting their Habitat for Humanity houses to have a lock on their cabinet, on a cabinet as they build them. So that's something that we're in the process of working on. We've already talked to some builders. It's challenging, but something that we're continuing to
again, they don't see the need, so you have to show the benefit to them.
Yes. So, and then the third, safe prescribing. This is an area where we are in early stages, but are really hoping to work more with our local healthcare providers on their prescribing practices. And we have developed a provider. One thing that we realized is we didn't understand a lot of why they may or may not be prescribing in certain ways or using our controlled substance reporting system, which is our statewide prescription monitoring program. So we have developed a provider survey that we're just hoping to use to get more information about, what kind of patient education are they doing with their patients on safe disposal and safe storage? Are they screening patients for dependence and misuse? Are they monitoring them? And then how much do they use the controlled substance reporting system, and what are the challenges to that? So we're in the early stages of that, but are hoping to use that information to really tailor our work and what we're asking of local healthcare providers, so that they can really be a part of decreasing this access and diversion. And then the last thing I will share is an initiative of one of our members, the Orange County Sheriff's Office. They have recently, just this summer, launched an initiative called CORE, which stands for Coordinated Opioid Overdose Response Effort. So there are three parts to this program. One is that they realized that among the law enforcement agencies in the area, you know, sometimes there is information that, you know, someone that one law enforcement agency may be very familiar with, and they may live in their area, and they may have a lot of interactions with. If they're in another part of the county and there's an overdose or some sort of event, they may not ever get that information. And so basically they realized they needed to be better about sharing information among agencies about overdoses and narcotics related events. So they have put together a sort of a joint database that's shared among all the narcotics officers for the different law enforcement agencies, so they can share information better between the agencies. Also, anytime there's an overdose in the county, there will be a follow-up to that. You know, they're recognizing that there's a window of time where those folks that have had an overdose might be more open to treatment. So anytime there's an overdose, within the next like 3 to 5 days, there's a follow-up by someone from EMS, our EMS partners. We'll follow up with that person to, you know, talk about treatment options and really encourage them to take a step at that point, and really try to get into that window of when they may be more open to treatment. They're really trying to remove a lot of barriers connected to treatment for folks. And then the third part of that core program is an amnesty program where, you know, they're letting, you know, anyone who feels like they need help with addiction come to the sheriff's office and ask for help. And the sheriff's office, you know, has someone that is working with those people to get them the help they need. And with, hopefully with, you know, working with insurance and things, but if not, they're committed to, you know, covering the cost of doing what they need to do to get that person into treatment. And so there's a lot of local partners with that. So we're excited about that leadership effort on our sheriff's office. So that's the gist of a lot of what we're doing around with environmental strategies and around prescription drugs and opioid prevention. I tried to give a pretty brief summary, but if there are any...
All right, everyone's off of mute, so feel free to either ask your question, or if you want to type it in the chat, you can do that as well. A question I have for you, Orange Partnership, is what kinds of responses did you get from law enforcement when you wanted to install a drop box outside of a law enforcement agency area? Was there any conversation that you needed to have to convince them it would be a good idea, or were they like, sure, put them wherever, it's fine with us?
We made it sound so easy, didn't we?
And actually, it was easier than I anticipated. We brought up the issue that we had a pharmacy who is interested in procuring some sort of disposal system. She was looking at a different type of thing, the owner was, and looking for support of this effort. And before she went through the DEA process to be a designated site, we needed to see how we as a coalition could try and help support her efforts. And the sheriff's office are the ones that came forward and said, you know, this drop box is underutilized and we would be willing to transfer it. So she did the process of getting the DEA requirements fulfilled and all that, and then it was a matter of moving it. We have, you know, the benefit, the good fortune to have a very supportive law enforcement when it comes to addressing prescription drug abuse.
And I think, were you asking about how hard was it to actually get our law enforcement agencies to carry the boxes?
Well, it was more about maybe if they tended to feel more protective around, you know, ownership of that. And Debbie was asking a question in the chat about, you know, who's responsible for the box in the pharmacy? Does the pharmacy owner take care of all the disposal, or does that go back to the police or the sheriff or whatever law enforcement agency?
And that's what I was going to follow up on. So getting the box into the pharmacy was pretty easy because of a logistical thing. They had one and all that. The back end being disposal, as always, is the bigger hurdle. And so there was a lot of back and forth on who would be in charge of that. Obviously, the pharmacy could not. That is a DEA thing. So it has to be under the control of a law enforcement agency. In this case, the sheriff's office was willing to give them the box, but the pharmacy is actually under the municipal jurisdiction. So then we had to kind of work through who's going to be in charge of this. And that took some working through, and basically through conversations, trying to work through storage issues for them, because they are taking their meds that they collect in their boxes to the DEA and SBI take-back events. So they're utilizing those opportunities. They don't have their own unit. That's something that we're also looking at addressing, trying to support, but as a county, how that happens. So the sheriff's office did come through and finally agree to take care of the collection and destruction.
All right, great, thank you. What other questions do we have? You can either unmute with the microphone in the lower left-hand corner, or feel free to type it in the chat and I will read that out loud.
While they may be thinking about some things, just to share some of the things that we have looked at regarding destruction of collected medications. There's, in our area, at least 3 different ways. One is under contract with Stericycle, and that can get, you know, there's a cost issue there, and is it sustainable, and how would that work when it's each individual law enforcement, or could it be one law enforcement agency to do it for all of them within the county? That's one of the things that we're trying to look at and work through. Another is there's a burn unit, a mobile burn unit that I know some counties have gotten. We do not have one here, but it's called the Terminator. So I know Buncombe County in North Carolina, for example, has it, and they use it in surrounding counties. And then there are some other methods that law enforcement has used, but again, it goes back to how law enforcement handles it. And then there's also the take-back events where you can partner with law enforcement to destroy it then. So those are kind of the different ways of looking at destruction, but that is something that always has to be considered when putting in a drop box.
And they actually, our local, 2 local agencies asked us to help them purchase an incinerator with DFC funds. And many of you all may know this, I had to find out that you are not allowed to use DFC funds for incineration or actual destruction of meds. So you can get the drop box, but you can't use them for actually helping to destroy the medications. So they were able to.
But if you have a local Safe Kids organization in your community, when we first started partnering with Safe Kids, their focus has always been bike helmet safety and fire protection and things like that. But with the opioid epidemic and with the potential for harm to kids, that's come under their radar. And so they've become very interested. Safe Kids has been a strong partner throughout our state to address prescription drugs, and they're part of the group that is helping to fund some of the take-back events as well. So partnering with Safe Kids, if you have one, is really good. Ours is now looking at trying to address the destruction issue. So if we can't get grant funding this way, maybe through Safe Kids.
Yeah, I love that partnership idea, and it made me think of one of our civic organizations in the Exchange Club has, child abuse and child safety as a main focus for some of their charitable work. And I'm just wondering, there may be folks who have civic organizations who are organized around childhood safety or protection who might be willing grant partners as well. So great suggestion. Always, I love hearing about partnerships because we're all in this together. All right, any other questions from the group? Debbie asked in the chat if the pharmacy is willing to be responsible for any theft or misuse of the collected drugs. So the pharmacy that's the Dropbox site.
Right. So obviously, there's a lot of logistical things that the DEA requires in order to be an approved site. And part of that is it staffed 24/7, or does it have a visual 24/7? So cameras, for example. That is one of the things. The pharmacy, it's an enclosed box. They don't have a key. The sheriff's office has a key. So once it goes in the box, and it's a big box, it's deep.
It would be pretty hard for someone to get it out of there before the sheriff's office there, yeah.
Yeah. But per the DEA regulations, yes, they met all the requirements and they took that responsibility.
Okay, great. Another example of a great community partnership then. Well, thank you very much for sharing. Hang out for a little while, and I'd like to invite Jen to share some of her environmental success strategies. So Jen, take it away.
Hello. So it sounds like you guys modeled your program, the Lockbox program, off of ours, because we did do a presentation for ECS. So some of this is going to be a little bit of a recap of what Marianne just talked about. And I'm so glad to hear that you guys were able to successfully duplicate the program. That is so awesome. So I am kind of just going to go over some of the environmental strategies that we did for our medication diversion program, and then some of the new strategies that we've added in the past year and a half. So we have the medication diversion program, and I'm going to go through the strategies kind of as they are environmental strategies for enhancing access and reducing barriers. We really worked a lot with language, not just translation, but making sure that all of the materials that we have in the boxes, as well as the materials that we're presenting to the community, are in a form that's readable for everybody. So we make sure that it's in about a third grade reading level, so that all members of the community, whether they have an education or not, can understand about properly disposing of medications and using medication lockboxes. And then we have about a 5% Latino population in our community, so we do try to translate as much as we can into Spanish. And so we work a little bit with changing consequences. We do drawings at our annual Take Back events. So people bring in their medications and they're offered incentives to be able, whenever they drop off medications. And a little bit of what you guys were talking about people not wanting or feeling comfortable going to the police department. We hold Take Back days, not just at the police department, but at other locations as well. We've had them at community health fairs. We've had them at parent-teacher conferences. We've had them at in the energy fair that we have in town. So we're going out into the community and not just holding them at the police department, which is what we had done in the past. And so, changing physical design, we did and do still handle lockboxes. We partner with the schools. They hand out to anybody that takes the medication at school, or if there's any violations, a student has any violations, they hand them out to those parents as well. We partnered with the police department. They hand out lockboxes at the police department, and they hand them out to anybody that has a prescription drug or opioid violation, or if they go out to any calls. We work with the pharmacy. They're offered every time anybody gets a narcotic, and they're available for sale, or the ones that we have, they can give them away. We worked with realtors, so they hand them out to all new homeowners and the people that are selling, as well as the realtors use them for open houses to lock up the medications in the houses for the local people that are selling their houses. The healthcare offices also hand out the medication lockbox. We, of course, have a permanent lockbox that's installed, that's accessible 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and it's under video surveillance, so we are not worried about diversion of the medications from there. And we focused a lot with our prescription drug initiative with really changing and modifying some policies to build in some sustainability for maybe, when base isn't around. So we have the school actually changed their policy to hand out medication lockboxes to anyone with a medication violation. And what that does, that makes it so that if we can't purchase boxes, it is in their policy. And so they have committed to being able to purchase the boxes to hand them out. We worked with the police department, so they developed a policy to take and properly dispose of medications if there's any death calls that they go to. So they will actually take the medication from those calls. We also worked with the police department. They will go and pick up and properly dispose of medications if there are people in the community with transportation issues, whether that be they're elderly, they don't have access to a car, they don't have a driver's license. 2 officers from the PD will actually go out and pick up the medications and bring them and dispose of them. We partnered with our fire department and our EMS, and they have a policy that they also offer lockboxes on calls associated with overdoses. We do fire and EMS because a lot of the time fire is our first responders. Our EMS is all volunteer in our community. Excuse me. We worked with funeral homes to develop policy to offer lockboxes to all of their clients. We actually have, I would say, little tasteful cards that say, we're sorry for your loss, but please remember in this time that medications can be diverted, and so we talk to them about properly disposing and having lock boxes for the future for them. And then, like I said, with the realtors, they actually developed a policy to offer lock boxes and to use them at open houses. And we worked with Section 8 housing. That's a sector of our community, the low-income population, that is often overlooked, and we find it a little bit harder to find ways to really reach out to them. So we reached out to the Section 8 housing to develop a policy. They offer lock boxes to all of their tenants, and so does our local food pantry. And then we went actually with 2 police officers around to local businesses and healthcare facilities, and to explain to them with information that's specific to their sector about the dangers of prescription drug misuse and abuse, awareness information, and then how to properly dispose of medications and use lock boxes. And then within the last year, we started using the medicine locks that you can get for the top of medicine pill bottles that actually has a timer on it that shows the last time that the bottle was opened. And so we have started using those. We're working with pharmacies to have them offer those to everybody that is given a narcotic at our local pharmacy. And then we're also giving them away at community events just in case people need them. We're working to get disposal bags. There's a medication disposal bags where you put the medicine in. It actually has chemicals in it. You mix it up and it takes away all the effects of medicine. You can actually just throw them in the trash. So those are great for people that have transportation issues as well, because they can just dispose of them in their own house. And then we are also working with our local police department. We do drug interdictions. So that is where they saturate an area. And usually it's an area that's known for prescription drug or opioid abuse. And they work with all other police agencies to come in, saturate the area, pull people over. And we've actually had some big narcotics arrests because of these. And that's about all that I have for our environmental strategies. Sorry if I went over those a little fast.
Jen, that's great. And you are my hero for powering through what sounds like a not very fun cold to share all that with us. So thank you so much.
Sorry about that.
No. I have been there before, and so thank you for being here with us today. One of the questions that I had is your work with the food pantry. Do you just make those available for people to pick up there, or do you have somebody maybe who is there during certain pantry operation hours to hand them out and give information as well?
We do both. We have some at the pantry that they give away. They just have them sitting on the shelf with the information about how to dispose of your medications and about how to use the lockbox. And then with the pantry, sometimes has the bigger events like around Thanksgiving, around the holidays, where they give more. And then we have somebody come there and actually sit with a table. And sometimes we have an officer, sometimes it's me and an officer, and we just talk to people about safely disposing of your meds and locking up your meds as well.
Great. A couple questions came in through the chat. One of them is, who funds the purchase of all the lock boxes that you're giving out, the medicine tops and the disposal bags?
So we have Drug-Free Communities funding, and we also have Partnership for Success funding in our state. And we work with some local foundations. We work with United Way, and we work with our local Evansville fund to fund that. And we're looking, and part of our sustainability plan is actually talking with insurance companies. They have some grants available to see if they would be available to purchase some of them for the future as well.
Okay, great. So a nice variety of different funding sources, very important for sustainability. Another question here is, what incentives were offered for the drug take back? So you talked about having some prizes offered.
Yeah, so we do a drawing, or everybody that comes can be entered in a drawing to win a $50 grocery store gift certificate. But then we also, every drug take back, we have something, whether it's like pencils or pens, or we have like these little pill balls, squishy stress balls, or just some little things like that. But then we always do a drawing for a $50 gift certificate.
All right, very good. Yeah, and Gayanne just shared, thank you for sharing the idea about the disposal bags for those who have transportation issues. She mentioned that their pharmacy partner with the Orange Partnership also has those, and they were giving them away at community events. So it's an
okay. And one other thing I forgot is that we started partnering with our local Meals on Wheels through our churches. So we offer medication and lock boxes through those, as well as the disposal bags and the medicine tops as well. Yeah, I love all of these ideas of reaching out to folks who would probably love to participate but just don't have a way of getting there. So working with Meals on Wheels or mobile meals, whatever's in the community, is an awesome way to do that. And I was also really, I loved hearing that you reached out specifically to folks in low-income housing who may be often overlooked in some of these efforts, to really connect with them and make sure that they had the same kind of access to take care of their meds that everyone else does. So it's a good reminder for all of us when we're doing our work is, who's missing here? Are we really making sure that we're touching every part of the community?